I'm not wrong?
Yes, ma'am. Outsourcing.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, you can take over.
Okay,
You can
ma'am.
begin because we're quite late as it is. Yes, you can take over, share your slides.
Ma'am, is this slide
Share your slides.
visible?
Adhere to the time limit.
Sure, ma'am.
Ma'am, voice is echoing a lot.
My voice is echoing. You don't need to hear me. Let us hear you today. Okay, carry on.
Ma'am, one of
No,
them
ma'am,
is
Ovais's
used to
voice is
join.
like delaying a lot.
Shall we begin?
Yes, you may begin.
Okay, ma'am. Good afternoon, everyone. Today, I'll Group will present on the presentation topic outsourcing. Through this presentation, we'll be talking about outsourcing. Let us move on to the first slide. Firstly, let's discuss what outsourcing is. So, outsourcing basically is a process of contracting outside party to provide services which otherwise would be performed by in-house employees. Outsourcing involves the transfer of an organization's regular business activities like the functions and processes to an outside service provider to provide the services back to the organization in return as defined in the contract between them signed before. So the core of an outsourcing arrangement is that the control and ownership of business activities are put into the hands of service provider. Thus, the service provider owns and manages those business processes. So now let us move forward and discuss how does outsourcing fit into a company's strategic activities. As given in the slide that an organization comprises of non-core activities and core activities, so we'll discuss them in detail as well. So core activities are the essential defining activities of an organization. If an organization gave those activities to an external party, then they are using themselves for outsourcing, then it will be creating a competitor or dissolving in itself. So critical but non-core activities, if not performed exceptionally well, will place an organization at a competitive disadvantage or even at a risk. So increased focus on core business operations and developing competitive advantage have left companies wondering what to do with their non-core, less strategic processes. So here comes outsourcing. So it helps in distribution and inventory management as well. Now we'll discuss that how it will benefit the organization in its way. Although these processes are vital to the day-to-day organization supervisions of many organizations, users view them as overhead function that do not define their businesses and therefore contribute little to the identity. So we can say that the practices and the business competence such as data processing, supply chain management, warehousing, HR are being outsourced and other vital processes. So by companies divesting themselves of these non-core activities, they can more focus on their energies on core activities where they have competitive advantage in the competition while differentiating themselves from their competitors and taking advantage of cost saving from the outsourced functions. So let us now discuss the brief history of outsourcing. As the term outsourcing was firstly devised by the economist Ronald Coase in 1980s. So in 1980s, IT companies were the first, that is the information technology companies were the first who introduced the concept of outsourcing as they become cost effective in their scheming and provide better services at much reasonable rates. So evolved into forming what outsourcing has evolved, it emerged at forming blue collar jobs to highly specialized white collar jobs. So this was the brief introduction of outsourcing and the genesis of outsourcing. Now I'll take over to Faiza to continue the presentation forward.
Most commonly outsourced services. Web design and development is a regularly outsourced task. Most providers offer companies their choices of ready-made website templates that the information technology team can modify to their liking. Similarly, information technology outsourcing is the practice of using an external service provider to deliver some or all of the IT functions required by the business, including managing infrastructure, directing strategies, etc. IT outsourcing enables companies to reduce costs, increase productivity. Mostly application of software development or data storage is outsourced within information technology. Social media marketing. Nowadays, lots of companies are using social media platforms such as Instagram, Facebook, Snapchat, Twitter. Advertisement on these social media on these social media platforms is not an easy task and thus require considerable amount of time. Therefore, companies hire social media. Therefore, companies hire social marketing agencies. They'll have a team of skilled professionals set aside, and the work is to grow your followers. Similarly, human resource outsourcing, uh, using human resource outsourcing functions can all get easily administered by external agencies. Some external firms are more experienced at screening for suitable candidates and advertisement. Nowadays, all of the managerial healthcare services are outsourced by most companies around the world. These include teleradiology, medical transcription, medical coding, and billing. Legal outsourcing includes litigation support, uh, review analysis, drafting, document analysis. These prove to be advantageous for smaller scale industries where it is which aren't able to employ legal experts. Now, coming on to the creative services, creative outsourcing result in the better quality achievement. It includes designing logos, business cards, graphic designing, etc. A few examples of companies that have used outsourcing to expand their businesses. Alibaba. Alibaba started as a small internet company in China, and now it has developed into one of the world's biggest global e-commerce website. The founder Jack Ma outsourced the company's development to a website development to a US-based firm in its early days. Due to shortage of development talent in his own country, he decided to hire the developers from the US. Nike has no manufacturing plants of its own, but chooses to outsource work to contractors in the Philippines, Vietnam, Indonesia, and China. In this way, Nike uses outsourced labor because it is closer to the raw material Nike uses and lowers the cost of production, which allows for a greater profit margin. Ford Motors try to keep the strategically important tasks in-house and where they excel, while non-core tasks are outsourced to external suppliers. With the passage of time, increasing number of parts and components uh, are considered as non-core, and therefore Ford has outsourced production to number of external suppliers outside the US. Today, 70% of typical Ford vehicles come from parts, components, and services purchased from external suppliers. WhatsApp. Brian Acton and Jan Kong developed the idea of WhatsApp. The duo gathered $250,000 as seed fund from investors and had to keep costs at an absolute minimum. They outsourced the majority of development to a group of seasoned app developers in Russia, led by Igor Solomnikov. This allowed WhatsApp employees to shift their focus on other tasks, including customer support and administrative responsibilities. The tech giant Apple outsources hundreds of thousands of manufacturing jobs to countries like Mongolia, China, Korea, and Taiwan. But Apple apparently doesn't outsource to save money, but does to save time. It is well known that iPhone is designed in California but manufactured in China. That's about it. Over to Mayank.
Thank you, Veda. Hello, everyone. My name is Mayank Saraswat, and I would be presenting types of outsourcing services. We can divide the outsourcing services in mainly 6 types. These 6 types are professional outsourcing, IT outsourcing, manufacturing, operational, process specific, and project outsourcing. Now let's discuss these one by one. First, professional outsourcing. When one company outsources specialized services such as accounting, legal, software services, etc., like CAT, MATLAB, etc., then this is called as professional outsourcing. It is one of the most common type of outsourcing, and company might not even know that they are outsourcing while they are doing so. Now, second is IT outsourcing. In IT outsourcing, let us say that company A outsources some common IT tasks such as maintaining security, keep licensing up to date, or network management, etc., to another company. Now, third, manufacturing outsourcing. Manufacturing outsourcing is common for both big as well as small companies, and similarly new as well as old companies. And they do so for variety of reasons. For example, like Faiza told about Apple, Apple do so for saving time, and similarly, many of these companies outsource manufacturing for various of the reasons. Now, operational outsourcing. In those companies that do manufacturing outsourcing also generally tends to go for operational outsourcing because of various reasons. This operational outsourcing includes outsourcing services like equipment repair, warranty services, etc. Now, fifth type is process-specific outsourcing. In process-specific outsourcing, it is divided into three subtypes: KPO, LPO, and RPO. KPO is knowledge process outsourcing, LPO legal process outsourcing, and RPO recruitment process outsourcing. In knowledge process outsourcing, for example, a company A has some data and it needs to get that data analyzed and researched, then it might transfer that data to company B and do the task for him. Similarly, in legal process outsourcing, a company A outsources all the legal work to another company. In recruitment process outsourcing, when a company needs to hire a staff and it might not have expertise, or it might not know the place where it is recruiting, then it might take help for recruitment to another recruitment firm. Now, last is project outsourcing. This includes all the area of jobs that we have discussed till now, and in this, a whole project and including all of the above are outsourced to another company. It may be due to lack of expertise, skills, economic reasons, or any of the reasons. For example, we have seen government outsource the skilling of people to private companies via PMKVY, and this all was done excellently by private companies in place of them, and the government outsourced this. Thank you. Now, I would like to call Sayanathan for further explanation.
Thank you, Mayank. Good afternoon, one and all. Let us now discuss the outsourcing strategies. So, as the name suggests, to ensure that the outsourcing is successful, a company needs to have certain kinds of strategies. Researcher Busey M defined strategic outsourcing as the strategic decision of a business to stop carrying out an activity in-house. In simple words, we can say that outsourcing is the contracting of a business function to an external supplier. Now, this often involves the transfer of processes, people, and assets to the supplier. Now, let us discuss what actually are these strategies. Moving on, we have broadly three types of outsourcing strategies. They are local outsourcing, nearby outsourcing, and offshore outsourcing. What happens in local outsourcing is the service is generally performed in the same country as the service is received, or in a country where labor rates are generally consistent with those where the service is received. For example, US to US, India to India, etc. Next is nearby outsourcing. In this kind of outsourcing, the service is generally performed in another country near where the service is received, and this is usually within or close to the same time zone, and where the labor rates are generally lower than those where the service is received. For example, Mexico to US. Finally, we have the third kind of outsourcing called the offshore outsourcing. Over here, the service is generally performed in another country where labor rates are lower than those where the service is received, and here there might be a significant difference in the time zone. For example, India to Sweden. Now, moving on, now that we have discussed the outsourcing strategies, how do we actually find out the pros and cons of these strategies and their effects based on how they are implemented? So, to understand the practical implications, there is no better way than a research study. Let us discuss one such research study titled as effects of offshore outsourcing of information technology work on client project management. This was conducted by researchers MC Lecity and JW Rotman and was published in the year 2019 in the Strategic Outsourcing and International Journal. Over here, the researchers made several points. The purpose of the research was to provide a deep understanding of the effects of outsourcing on the client project managers. The method used in this research study was there were interviews conducted with 67 client project managers in 25 different organizations responsible for integrating suppliers into project teams. Based on this method and the interviews conducted, the researchers came to certain kinds of findings. The conclusion of the findings was that there were in total around 6 positive effects and 21 negative effects, whereas among the project managers, whereas the senior executives had more success with this kind of outsourcing. Now, to understand really what these findings mean, we need to understand the context of the research. Since this was a case study done on particular organizations, researchers found some major shortcomings, such as project managers were assigned to lead projects with offshore suppliers without a strong organizational support in the form of a robust program management office. So you can imagine in such a scenario, some of the effects were the project managers actually felt that the projects could be staffed quicker because of offshore outsourcing. Then secondly, another effect was the project managers had access to the supplier's IT skill. Thirdly, there was also another effect that the project managers had to ensure that the supplier's employees were fully trained in the process standards as promised by the employer. So overall, there were 6 positive effects noted and some negative effects, 21 negative effects. Based on these findings, the researchers actually studied the offshore outsourcing and finally suggested some solutions. These solutions included that all of us, the companies, be willing to change internal work practices. Secondly, they build social capital with the key supplier executives. And third, they seek independent assessment of the outsourcing strategy effectiveness. That's all from my side. Now I'd like to invite Daim to take the presentation forward.
Process of outsourcing. Before going for outsourcing, ask yourself, why do you need to outsource? What do you seek to achieve through outsourcing activities? Expressing your goals of outsourcing clearly helps all the participants involved in framing the contract. It also avoids misunderstanding and conflict at a later stage. Now that you know what you want out outsourcing, it's time to think about what activity you should outsource. When considering what to outsource, you must differentiate between your company's core activities and routine activities. Do not outsource tasks and processes that are key to your organization. Instead, you should contract out activities that do not require constant vigilance and cannot be carried out by others. Evaluating the cost of outsourcing. The benefit of outsourcing do not come for free. A lot of time and money goes in making this decision. Understanding the constraints and challenges and advantages of outsourcing. A successful outsourcing comes with its own set of constraints. It is advisable to think about and prepare all of them in advance. Some of the barriers that you have to take care can be environmental problems, legal issues, country standards, labor law, political issues, technology problems, and so forth. Clearly communicate your expectations. Effective communication both internally and externally is essential for successful outsourcing. All the stakeholders must be on the same page regarding the working and the outcome of the contract. Strike the deal with the right partner. Once you have decided to outsource, you need to find a right partner. Since most offshore agreements are of long-term contracts, striking a business deal with the correct party is crucial. Measure the performance of You must regularly measure the performance of your outsourced operation, find gaps, establish ways to fill them. Continuous training and education of employees are important. You must also upgrade current technologies and processes and always remain open to innovation. Now let's see what are some major advantages of outsourcing.
Good afternoon, everyone. Now, I would like to take this presentation forward by discussing the advantages of outsourcing. The business you outsource may be independent or large corporations. The size of the business doesn't matter. Contracting out operational tasks can provide a variety of benefits. Let's move forward with my slide to discuss how does outsourcing helps us. Wes, can you please put this slide for? Number one, that it helps to focus on core tasks. For example, let's say your company lands a large contract that will significantly increase the volume in a short period of time. The volume of purchasing. By outsourcing purchasing responsibilities, you free up personnel to focus on the contract itself. Number two is that it helps to maintain lower costs. Sometimes the expense of purchasing equipment or needing a new location can be prohibitive. In these cases, it's more cost effective to outsource than to expand operations internally. If the growth of your business results in an increased need for office space, try outsourcing simple operations such as telemarketing or data entry that can help to lower the cost. Number three, that it helps to promote growth. The overhead cost of some operations are extremely high, but you might want to offer them to satisfy customers, expand your business model, or to compete in the market. Outsourcing can be a good option if the cost of expanding to handle those operations yourself is too expensive, would take too long to effect, or would create inefficiencies in your business model. Number four, that it helps to maintain operational control. Operation with rising costs should be considered for outsourcing. Departments that might have evolved over time into uncontrolled or poorly managed areas are good candidates. An outsourcing company can often bring better management skills to your company than what would otherwise be available without significant reconstructing. Number five is that it offers staffing flexibility. Outsourcing allows operations or departments that have cyclical demands to bring in additional sources when they are necessary. The outsourcing company can then be released when things slow down again, maintain a company's flexibility. Number six is that it provides continuity and risk management. Periods of high employee turnover can add uncertainty and inconsistency to a business. Outsourcing provides a level of continuity to the company while reducing the risk that a substandard level of operation could bring even over a short period of time. And last is it helps to develop internal staff. A large project can require skills that your staff does not possess. On site outsourcing, when you bring in contractors to operate at your own location, can provide you with the people who possesses the skill you need, while your people work beside them to acquire a new skill set. Business often think about outsourcing purely in terms of cost savings, but outsourcing can do more than lower expensive. As your business grows, outsourcing can be a way to promote innovation, disrupt your industry, and access new skill set. Now, I would like to ask Saurabh to take this slide forward by explaining the demerits of outsourcing.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, everyone, for explaining this so well. Now, I would like to shed some light on disadvantages of outsourcing. First one is you lose some control. As you might expect, when you farm out work to the external agency or freelancer, you are losing some control of it. How this task is going to be monitored and performed. So as long you trust you have hired, there should not be a huge issue, but you got to tread carefully. Second, there are hidden costs. Although outsourcing work is generally considered cheaper, you must also beware of getting ripped off. Outsourcing companies or big agencies will typically ask a small business owner to sign lengthy contractual agreement, and they will include plenty of the print. If you don't read the terms carefully, you could get hit with unexpected cost. Third, there are security risks. In the age of data protection, it is essential that you exercise caution while dealing with data. If you plan to outsource process that requires personal data, you could be placing the privacy of other or security of your business at risk by passing the data to the other people. Fourth, you reduce quality control. Outsourcing companies and some freelancers may often be motivated by profit rather than doing the job well. So this means the work you send to the customer will come quickly, but will lack standard quality that customer have come to expect from you and from your product or services. Fifth, you share financial burden. Although it can be nice to bring an expert agency to share in risk, it can be pretty dangerous to tie your business to the financial well-being to another company. Again, you got to spell out and all the terms and condition in contractual agreement plainly, because you won't be able to take the financial hit if they fail to deliver. Sixth, you shift time frames. One major disadvantage of outsourcing particularly is the risk that your freelancers or partner agency may be marching to the beat of different drum. As a result, it might be difficult to sync schedules in order to ensure your customer service what promised them to a reliable timeline. Seventh, you risk public backlash. If you are taking work overseas, even just to write a blog or two, your business will very well run. It will, from consumer, have to take a moral stance against outsourcing, right or wrong, for better, for worse. And some sorts of criticism is also inevitable. Now, over to you, Abdul.
Thank you. Let's move on to business process outsourcing and a cost benefit analysis. Move on to the next slide, please. I don't think we have much time. C, cost benefit analysis. The process of comparing projected or estimated costs along with outcomes or opportunities is referred to as cost benefit analysis. In simple terms, it is done to figure out what we're getting in exchange for what we're paying. Let's break it down into a 5-step process for easier understanding. First, we have to establish an analysis framework. In this, we have to set aside the goals and objectives. The second step, we have to segregate the costs and the benefits or expenses versus the outsourcing alternatives. In the third step, we have to assign values for a quantitative analysis and an easier calculation. In the fourth step, we have to do the actual calculation and an interpretation. Finally, we have to do a conclusive analysis in which we pit the cost versus the benefits. For the costs, if the costs outweigh the benefits, it's better to go a different way so we can apply different strategies and benefit from that. But if the benefits outweigh the cost, then it's better to go with the particular strategy. On to the next slide, please. Okay, so let's take an example of a company that is choosing to outsource. On the left side, we have the costs or the expenses that a company might incur if it decides to insource the operations. On the right side, we have the benefits or the positive things that might come out of outsourcing. First, we have training and recruiting fees. See, the company will have to spend money on training and recruiting, and on the benefits side, it will already get a trained employed workforce. Then we have to pay the rent and accommodation. On the benefit side, we have lots of savings in office space. Adding one and two, we can see there's an increase in budget, and if we add the benefits on the right side, then we can see there's a lot of unused expenses, so we can reallocate those. Finally, there's a wage difference. Imagine if there's a company in the US that decides to outsource to India. The minimum wage over there is $12 to $13 an hour, while in India they'll have to pay barely 350 to 400 per hour. So, from an overall picture perspective, there will be a lot of savings. This was just an overall overview to provide a better insight as to why companies choose to outsource. Moving on to OS for the key learnings.
Now, in order to effectively grasp the key learnings, we will look at the key lessons learned from both the successful and the unsuccessful implementations of outsourcing. As we've already overshot the time, I will try to keep it as brief as possible. So here are the lessons learned from the successful implementations. Lesson number 1, accurate identification of the tasks to outsource. One of the foremost aspects of outsourcing is knowing when you want to outsource, what to outsource, and most importantly, why you wish to do so. Lesson number 2, outsourcing non-core functionalities first. When companies are considering outsourcing as an option, they should remember that outsourcing technical requirements is not always the right step to take. Lesson number 3, outsourcing helps save a huge amount of money. To better understand this point, let's take the example of Slack. It is a business messaging app and is one of the best IT outsourcing examples of saving expenses and overhead costs and generating high revenues. So now we will look at some crucial lessons learned from unsuccessful implementations of outsourcing. Lesson number 1, proper planning is important. Poor planning can ruin and cause a lot more damage than you can imagine. To ensure a smooth operation, it is extremely important to etch out every detail of the process and clarify your expected result. Lesson number 2, adequate technical expertise is a must. Whenever outsourcing work to offshore vendors, it is important to check if they have the requisite skills, supporting technology, and the right workforce. Lesson number 3, proper communication is the backbone. While outsourcing, it is quite essential to define the roles, responsibilities, and expectations to the offshore partner and onshore teams. Now we have come to the conclusion of this presentation. I hope this presentation must have given you significant ideas regarding outsourcing. Besides an elaborate picture of the outsourcing failure examples, you also learned about what are the prime points to keep in mind during its implementation. That's all from our side. Now I would like to request my mentors and my fellow classmates to put forward any questions that they might have.
Yes, I have a question. Can I go ahead? Are there any business processes that can be outsourced but are not in general?
Permission to answer, ma'am? Is ma'am there or not? All right, to answer your question, yes, there are a lot of processes that we can outsource but choose not to. For example, there is accounting. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, so for example, we have accounting. Now, different countries, different companies, they have different, parameters for accounting. For example, what we choose to show as expenses over here might not be the same in Colombia or USA or somewhere else. So while they may be able to outsource it, it is better not to and conduct it within the same country. Same goes for marketing. Suppose there's this particular product that we want to market in the US. Do you think it's better to choose someone from India to market the product or someone who's over there and better familiar with the audience and the product? You understand now?
To add to that, as we discussed, that outsourcing of non-core functionalities is generally done before the core functionalities. So there are a lot of core functionalities in the business that the company does not choose to outsource. I hope we were able to clear your doubts, Karan.
I would also
Yes.
like to add something. We can say that outsourcing is wholly dependent on the company, and also on the scenario that the company is presently in. For example, a company might be facing some challenge that is it is not able to solve on its own, or maybe it has taken a different alternatives and calculated that it would be better for some other company to do it on behalf of it. So on these parameters, a company decides that whether or not it should take on outsourcing or not.
Can you know who asked that question?
I'm Karan.
Okay, correct. One more question we can announce.
Ma'am, can I ask?
Yes, Adam.
Yes. What
Okay.
are the challenges a company might face if it outsources to a different?
Can you please repeat the question
Ma'am,
again?
can I answer?
Jyoti
Can I
slow
repeat
speak.
it?
Can you repeat the question, please?
Yes. What are the challenges of a company might if it outsources to a different?
Okay, so the challenge is a company might face if it outsources to a different country. In the previous answer, I said that suppose there's a company in the US, they want to market a particular product, okay, and they have this Indian company they have chosen for marketing. So what do you think is a better option? A company that's established in the US is familiar with the audience, is familiar with the product to market that particular product, or someone in India with a different market size and market preferences? Okay. Second of all, there's a few things we cannot predict in nations. There's tax reform. There are tax reforms coming every term change. There is a political instability that we might not be able to protect. So invariably, if we don't factor these in, there might be a loss on the company's behalf if they outsource to a different country.
To add to
Can
that,
I
I
add
there
would
one
also,
might
point over
be
it?
I
poor
would also like to
communication
add
I
to
would like to say
this.
and,
something.
excuse me.
Yes, Sudesh, you can continue.
Yes, to add to that, there might also be language barriers, poor communications, among many other examples of challenges, lack of transparency and control. So
I
these
would
are
like to
also,
add
yeah. Go ahead, Anas.
Yes, this
by
is correct,
outsourcing
but what we have to
having
analyze
very
that by,
Hamad, can I speak?
yes, sure.
Having very high expectations, a business may have exaggerated expectation from an IT outsourcing company. It may think that everything will be taken care of by the outsourcing service provider, but it has nothing to do. Such unrealistic expectations can result in project failure and disappointment for the business. Now, Ahmad, you can continue with your point.
Correct. Like by outsourcing, we are not meaning that we are deviating our shoulders responsibility to someone else, but we have to keep a thorough eye on them. We can suppose, let's say, an example of Virgin Airlines that what happened in 2010, that about 50,000 passengers were stranded and their flights were cancelled for 24 hours. Surprisingly amazing. That it wasn't the first time in the latest 3 months of the airline's operating system that the agency that they have outsourced their operating system got clashed, but within 24 hours they are not able to software as a software service vendor. So thereby we have to keep a thorough eye that we have outsourced, but we have to keep a clean eye that what is going to be done and it is at par with our policies and plans as well. Hope that answers your question, Aram.
I think we should be over with the question. Just one question I have for you. Somebody mentioned social capital. What is the social capital? Okay.
Can I
Somebody talked
answer?
about. Yes, Mayank, I would like to hear your. Yes.
Ma'am,
Can I answer
social
this
capital
question?
can be
Achha.
referred to as it is a set of capital that, for example, when the people that are working in a company interacts with the people that are maybe not directly related to the company, but maybe are taking its services, or maybe they are a part of the outsourced team. So when these type of people interact with each other, it is a part of social capital that a company gathers.
And the
There's
word
more
social
one
capital
more
comprise like
definition.
two concepts: social and capital. Capital that yields some return to us, and social that is the society in which we are living.
According
So
to me,
that both
social capital
comprise.
is a set of shared values that allows individuals to work together in a group to effectively achieve a common purpose. The idea is generally used to describe how members are able to band together in society to live in a peaceful and harmonious way.
But why the word cost? Anyway, one more thing. It was good you have referred to legal process of outsourcing. It is the latest among the kinds of outsourcing. It's the latest inclusion. It's in a very nascent stage. India is also developing legal process outsourcing. They are doing well on that. There is also knowledge process outsourcing. I think you left on this aspect. You did mention business
Yes,
process
ma'am. I
outsourcing.
mentioned knowledge
And
process
also,
outsourcing.
I appreciate legal process outsourcing is the one which is the latest inclusion in the kinds of outsourcing that you could refer to it and you could describe it in brief, India being a market for that. Then there is engineering process outsourcing, which is basically for the architects and the builders, which I think has been overlooked by you all. That's fine.
Ma'am, it was included in professional
Ba-
outsourcing, specialized services.
yes. Backsourcing, did somebody mention? No. What is backsourcing? You did mention near sourcing, offshore sourcing, and all that. What is backsourcing? If somebody can throw some
Ma'am, it
light
is
on it.
bringing previously outsourced jobs back into the company. Suppose we were conducting something out by outsourcing, we can bring it back in our
Very
house
good.
for certain reasons.
Very good. Good. That means that shows you have had a thorough study of what you're presenting. Okay, I'll get back to you with your notable features of your presentations by this evening or tomorrow, positively. Thank you so much,
Sure,
students.
ma'am.
We
Thank
wind
you.
up with a
Thank
second
you
set
so
of
much, ma'am.
presentations.
Thank you so
Thank you,
much.
ma'am.
Thank you so much.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.